We're in Berry Place Temple. Prabhupada's just given a lecture and it's packed. Berry Place Temple room was small. Relatively speaking, it was small. Shyam Sundar had made a magnificent job of building it into something that was otherworldly. The temple room in Berry Place was just otherworldly, but it was small. And when it was packed, the condensation would drip from the ceiling and so forth. Prabhupada had just finished his talk and said, "Are there any questions?" And immediately an Indian lady who visited quite frequently to do service, she was a frequent visitor, but she was an individual at the same time. She kept herself to herself and was quite argumentative with devotees. Strangely enough, she liked being there, but she was a very argumentative. So Prabhupada said, "Question, are there any questions?" She stood up immediately and said, "Swami, can you see God?" It was quite challenging, and I thought, And Prabhupada said immediately, "Yes, you cannot." Then he looked around like this, "Krishna is everywhere. Why you cannot see?" And Prabhupada didn't need to say anything else. For me, I realized everything in that moment for me. That Krishna, he's everywhere. So if I can't see him, I got to start working. I got to do something. He's everywhere. So he said, "Why you cannot see?" And there was silence. And she was still standing. And Prabhupada was staring. Not staring like this, but gazing affectionately. "Why? You cannot see." And she didn't know what to say. Silence. More silence. And they're just looking at each other. So then Prabhupada says, "Do you want to see?" And the silence again, as she looks down at her feet and shakes her head like this. Then Prabhupada says loudly, "Therefore you cannot see." And if he said anything else, I can't remember. I was just stunned at how he dealt with this situation. At first it was a challenge. "Swami, can you see God?" Immediately, "Yes, you cannot. Krishna is everywhere. Why you cannot see?" And then, "Do you want to see?" "No. Therefore you..." And I almost saw the lightning come out, or whatever energy it was, come out of his finger when he said that to this lady. And she almost crumbled onto the floor. She got pranams like this. She didn't want to ask anything else. She'd heard what Prabhupada had. She'd heard what she needed to hear from Prabhupada, so she sat down. Like I say, if there's anything else after that, Prabhupada may have said more. I don't remember. I had what I had got from that. It was unbelievable. Massive experience. Prabhupada could say more in one word or in a couple of words than you could read in a book of philosophy sometimes. That was another thing that took me about Prabhupada. His way with words, his expertise in not misusing one word or using any words unnecessarily to get his point across. And sometimes, as with that lady, even he used the silence to speak volumes, because there were big pauses between "Krishna is everywhere, why you cannot see?" and then nothing, silence, silence. it was remarkable. I'd never seen anyone like this before, and of course never, ever will again. So I'm glad that I remembered that one, because that's usually, if people say, can you tell us some Prabhupada memories? Usually that's the one I start with, that, and the way that lady was humbled.
So Srila Prabhupada's coat came about. Govinda Dasi said that Prabhupada shouldn't wear black, neither should he have buttons. So she asked me if I could make a coat for him. And I thought she wanted wool. Now we were in Hawaii, you know, wool in Hawaii, saffron wool in Hawaii, what are the chances? So I went to Sears at Ala Moana Center, and as soon as I walked in the fabric department, on a table, there was a bolt of saffron wool, just the perfect color. And so I started getting a pattern. I got a sweatshirt pattern, and anyway, I ended up making the coat. And Govinda Dasi also had Prabhupada's coat from his business. So I would try Prabhupada's coat on to measure the coat I was making. But my realization was that Krishna was taking such nice care of Srila Prabhupada that his disciple wanted to serve him, and he, for appearances, it was better for him to have a saffron coat because of who he was and his position as a sannyasi. So everything just kind of came together. I couldn't find anything for the hood, and so I wandered around the store, and there was a toilet bowl cover that was that mustard-colored fleece that I used for the hood. Anyway, actually Prabhupada wrote me a letter, and because I told him that I would want something and then all of a sudden it would appear. And Prabhupada wrote to me, he said, yes, he said, Krishna takes care of all living entities, but for his devotees he takes specific care. So don't be surprised that Krishna is providing for you specifically.
I was a college student at Temple University. In 1967, Prabhupada came to visit my college, and he had a few devotees with him, and in those days they used to dance in a circle and chant Hare Krishna. And Prabhupada spoke. I was so non-conscious that I don't remember a lot of the things he said, but I did remember that he said, no illicit sex, no gambling, no intoxication, and no meeting. And I was thinking, this is 1967, and this person is preaching no intoxication, no illicit sex in the middle of the university campus. He must have integrity. He must not be looking just for money or followers, but really presenting something genuine, because he was going against the current of the material world and what the young students were into. So even though I didn't have an intense experience with Prabhupada, I always carried that feeling of respect that I had from that first meeting.
At that time, there was this devotee who I knew very well, and he was a really a rascal devotee. I mean, he did the most terrible things, dressed as a devotee. He was a devotee, but a bit crazy, and he did things that would have made Prabhupada really angry, I know. And he got put in prison for some of the stupid things he did. But for some amazing miracle, he got let out of prison, and he came to the manor that day, just for the weekend, so he could see Prabhupada. So he was in there, and Prabhupada, we know, knows everything about, he knows what's going on. And he kept looking at this devotee and smiling and giving him so much mercy. I was just like, whoa, you know, and from that I just saw the compassion Srila Prabhupada had for everyone, everyone. He loved him as much as everyone. I was just absolutely, you know, I was amazed, amazed.
In 1977, of course, Srila Prabhupada was physically extremely ill and getting worse and worse and worse. And it was becoming more and more apparent that probably he was going to be leaving his body. And so devotees, a lot of devotees were going to Vrindavan to be with Prabhupada. And I went with 2 other devotees from America. We arrived in Vrindavan at Krishna Balaram Mandir in the middle of the night. I don't remember what time, 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or something, I don't know. And we went immediately to Prabhupada's room. It was dark, it was very quiet, there was nobody there. But we just walked in very quietly. The only person who was there was Bhavananda Maharaj. He was attending to Prabhupada's needs. And he just motioned for us to come in and sit down quietly. So we did that. We sat not too near the bed, but maybe a meter away or something. And then, and Prabhupada, of course this was before the internet, so we didn't get to see so many photographs very quickly, but we did understand that Prabhupada was emaciated, incapacitated. We'd seen photos from London, from his visit to London. And so Prabhupada was lying on his back, apparently asleep. And then Bhavananda Maharaj said, Srila Prabhupada said very quietly, Srila Prabhupada, these boys have come all the way from America just to be with you. And Srila Prabhupada turned his head just slightly toward us, and he said, oh, thank you very much. How are you? Now the 3 of us were more or less 30 years old and relatively healthy, and we were really embarrassed. We just looked at each other like, you know, how are we? You know, Srila Prabhupada, how are you? We didn't say anything because it felt so awkward, but that's the way we felt. And it was just another illustration of how humble Srila Prabhupada was and how much he cared for other living entities, even in his own very difficult circumstances.
Jai